The committee will come to order. Mr. Administrator, welcome to the Commerce, Justice, Science Subcommittee hearing on the President's 2017 budget request for NASA. You're no stranger to the committee. Last year, Congress provided NASA with $19.3 billion in the 2016 omnibus that maintained a balanced space program, ensuring that NASA's priorities are able to move forward. We hoped at that time that this administration would leverage the solid financial foundation we provided to move forward on all of NASA's exploration goals. But I think that hope was short-lived. The budget that NASA has presented to us claims to include a total funding level of $19 billion. But we have to look at this closely. This overall amount is achieved through a combination of discretionary spending and an unprecedented amount of funding disguised as mandatory when it's in fact is not actually mandatory. Since the budget rollout of February the 9th, NASA has used glossy rhetoric to mask the fact that $763 million of the agency's requested funding is offset by proposed tax increases, such as a new $10 tax on each barrel of imported oil that Congress has not yet considered, nor do I expect that we ever will consider. The truth is that NASA's request is only $18.26 billion, a cut of $1 billion from what this subcommittee provided in the last fiscal year. These cuts, if enacted, would erode ongoing science missions, jeopardize core operations, and delay exploration launches. I'm sure it's no coincidence that most of those proposed cuts target programs that are supported by this committee and other members of Congress in both chambers and on both sides of the aisle. The simple fact, I believe, is this, that the administration prioritized funding elsewhere in the government's budget, and it could not find enough discretionary funding to make NASA whole. Once again, NASA has failed to propose, I believe, a truthful budget that can be accomplish the agency's goals. In order to move forward in 2017, the subcommittee, I believe, must set aside those so-called mandatory spending gimmicks. Instead, we must provide honest funding that is necessary to advance our nation's space program using discretionary spending that does not bust the budget caps agreed upon last fall. This proposed budget represents staggering reductions that would lead to a nearly $1 billion reduction to NASA's discretionary budget compared to last year. Those proposed cuts could have been both near-term and long-term, has both implications, and if not corrected, will delay ongoing work and will drive up development costs, outcomes that this subcommittee has worked hard to avoid. I look forward to, particularly with the concern the consistent lack of support for NASA's human exploration efforts to go beyond low Earth orbit. The Space Launch System, SLS, is proposed to be cut by $770 billion, and its crewed vehicle Orion would be cut by $217 million. In addition, the proposed funding and development path for SLS ensures that our next crewed exploration vehicles would not even meet NASA's far from ambitious target of launching in 2023. Surprisingly, NASA has not proposed a single dollar for the development of an upper stage engine that is absolutely necessary for a crewed mission that is only 7 years away. The request would not allow NASA to stay current on its own Orion production and launch schedule. Administrator Bolden, you've traveled around the country in recent months touting NASA's strong support for SLS and Orion missions, when in reality this budget will effectively delay any advancement in a NASA-led human mission to Mars or anywhere at all. Quite frankly, if this weak budget plan for exploration is what the administration calls strong support, I hate to imagine what the request would look like if there was only a professed marginal commitment from NASA. Other missions across NASA will also feel the detrimental consequences of this request level. Planetary science missions such as Mars Opportunity, Mars Odyssey, and Mars Express would be totally reliant on imaginary funding to continue operations and therefore are effectively canceled in this budget. Under this year's proposed budget request, the spectacularly successful New Horizons mission to Pluto, which had its mission extended, will essentially have to depend on a tax increase that has virtually no chance of being enacted. Even the recent high-profile announcements of aeronautics experimental flight vehicles will become greatly dependent on budgetary gimmicks. Many other activities across NASA are open to additional risk caused by budgetary uncertainty. Both the Inspector General and the Government Accountability Office, GAO, have cited the risk from funding uncertainty as a top chronic concern at NASA, and this budget has borne out those concerns even further. In fact, this budget creates more problems than it solves. I find it disturbing that NASA's true priorities are not better reflected in an honest budget. I look forward to hearing your views on these matters and ask you to work with our subcommittee members to address our many concerns in the 17 bill. But before I yield to our Vice Chairman, Senator Mikulski, I want to recognize that today is the last scheduled CGS budget hearing for this year. And this could be Senator Mikulski's final hearing as a member of this subcommittee, which she has helped to lead as chairwoman or as ranking member since 2005. Senator Mikulski, you've been a great champion for all of our federal science agencies over many decades, especially NASA, and you have also served as a vigilant steward of how our tax dollars are spent. You've consistently challenged NASA to be better, and because of your leadership, NASA has better served America's drive for exploring space and making new discoveries. Extending the life of the Hubble Space Telescope, rebooting the James Webb Space Telescope construction, returning the space shuttle to flight after the Columbia accident. These are just some of the very important activities you fought so hard to achieve and did over the years. You're a true and valued partner, and it's been a great pleasure and honor to work alongside you these many years. I look forward to one last year writing this subcommittee's appropriations bill with you together, and it's my hope that we can get NASA's budget right again this year. Senator Mikulski.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shelby, and I appreciate that warm introduction. Yes, this is for me, my final scheduled hearing of now what is called the CJS subcommittee on the budget of such an inspirational agency, the National Space Agency. I came to this committee I came to the Appropriations Committee in 1987 and was one of the first women to serve on this committee. Now there are so many able on both sides of the aisle who continue to serve. When I came to this committee or subcommittee, it was called the VA HUD subcommittee, VA HUD, an independent agency. And I wanted to be on it because I so loved America's veterans and wanted to help them the way I could. I wanted to be on a committee that funded HUD because I come from the gritty streets of Baltimore and had worked as a social worker, and I knew what a powerhouse that HUD could be for economic development and job opportunity. And then there were those independent agencies, one called NASA. I didn't know a lot about NASA. I knew we had the Space Telescope Institute in Baltimore. It was just the beginning of it. And of course, in my campaigns, I'd come to hear about something called Goddard. Well, Goddard and me, from early on to now, this fabulous place for the study of science. So from VA HUD to CJS, we've been here. And I'm so proud of the men and women that have worked here. And though I knew little about the space program, I certainly learned a lot to get started. Today, I'm going to pay a special tribute to Senator Jake Garn. When I came to this committee, this subcommittee, it was chaired by Senator Garn, a Republican from Utah, a senator who himself had flown into space. What a wonderful human being. He was gracious in his welcoming, and he was patient in his tutorial. Between he and John Glenn, I learned so much about the American space program and what it took to be great. not only great to be a great agency and in spaceflight, but how great men can make great things happen. And since then, we have had a forged bipartisan relationship. I'm very grateful for what Senator Garn did. And then I could work hand in hand with my own colleague, Senator Kit Bond. And then, of course, there was a unique friendship that I was able to develop with Kay Bailey Hutchinson as we put together our Space Coalition. And then you, Senator Shelby, you. You know, we know each other from Energy and Commerce House of Representatives days. It was the incubator of senators. Now, there were a lot of people in that committee that they saw rising stars that were a lot more glamorous. They were on all the editorial boards, favorite dial list, and they were on their way to be president. But we were on our way to be very solid senators. And from you, we have had such a superb relationship. I appreciate, again, the gracious way that you've governed, to get to know your wife, Annette, to get to know Huntsville, Alabama, where it's the only community in America that has its own foreign policy. And if you've ever been to the Paris Air Show, you know it. But because we have worked together, having the zone of civility, mutual respect, we've been able to do mutual accomplishments. I've been proud of this committee. I've been proud of the way we've helped transform the FBI, modernize the Weather Service, focusing on violence against women and making sure that we have more cops on the beat and that they have the right equipment. How we fought waste and fraud from $5 meatballs and $16 bagels to reducing the patent backlog. We certainly have done a lot. We've seen great accomplishments and great challenges. When I came to the committee, it was just days away from the terrible, terrible Challenger accident. Yet at the same time, whether it was the Challenger, whether it was the Columbia, whether it's the Hubble telescope that needed the most expensive contact lens in American history, we were able to solve those problems because we worked together. We've seen great discoveries, but I will tell you one of the greatest discoveries was getting to know the American space program from the astronauts who dare to go where no one has ever gone before, to then deliver the greatest discoveries in science to all those who work in space science and in aeronautics. I'm particularly proud of them. I'm grateful for what Maryland has been, from Goddard to APL to the Space Telescope Institute to WALBS. The greatest discovery has not only been what's out there, but the wonderful men and women who work right here. And I look forward to hearing your appropriations, probably your last appearance before here. And all I can say is, may the force be with us.
Thank you, Senator Mikulski. Administrator Bolden, your written testimony will be made part of the record in its entirety. You proceed as you wish.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I am pleased to be here today to discuss with you President Obama's $19 billion FY17 budget request for NASA. It's been my honor to serve as the NASA administrator throughout the Obama administration, and as we submit what is likely my final budget, I'm proud of the many things this agency has accomplished on behalf of the American people with the resources the President and the Congress have committed to us over the past 7 years. I also wish to personally join you, Mr. Chairman, in recognizing Senator Mikulski for her leadership throughout her service in Congress and her dedication to a robust, balanced, and bipartisan NASA program. Senator Mikulski, as I told you earlier, you will be sorely missed. Together, we have enabled our nation to continue leading the world in space exploration and scientific discovery. Last week, American astronaut Scott Kelly returned home from the International Space Station after 12 months working off the Earth for the Earth. His year in space will pay scientific and medical dividends for years to come, helping pave the way for future astronauts to travel to Mars and beyond. Commander Kelly significantly advanced our journey to Mars, and I trust that you all join me in saluting his service to our nation. NASA is closer to sending American astronauts to Mars than at any point in our history, and this budget will keep us moving forward. The support of this committee and Congress is essential to this journey. The International Space Station is the cornerstone of our exploration strategy. Thanks to the determination and ingenuity of American industry, we have returned space station cargo resupply launches to U.S. soil, in-source jobs, and helped establish a new private market in low Earth orbit. American companies are now ferrying supplies to our astronauts on the International Space Station from the United States, with Orbital ATK set to launch again later this month, and SpaceX targeting a resupply mission in early April, both from the Kennedy Space Center. In July, Orbital will return to its home to conduct a return-to-flight mission from the Wallops Flight Facility. Thanks to the administration's decision to invest in American industry and to this committee's full funding in last year's budget, Boeing and SpaceX continue to make great progress towards certification in 2007 to safely transport our astronauts to the space station from U.S. soil, ending our sole reliance on Russia once and for all. NASA is making significant progress on the journey to Mars, developing our newest, most powerful rocket ever built, the Space Launch System, and the Orion crew vehicle as part of a sustainable and affordable deep space exploration system. This budget supports the agency's baseline commitment for an uncrewed test flight of the SLS and Orion in 2018 and a crewed flight by 2023. With the additional funding provided by Congress, the teams are working toward an earlier launch date for the first crewed mission. The budget also increases funding for habitation systems development, a key component of our stepping stone strategy to send humans to Mars. The President's budget funds a robust science program with dozens of operating missions studying our solar system, the universe, and the most important planet in our solar system, Earth. This coming July 4th, Independence Day, the Juno spacecraft will orbit Jupiter, while the Cassini spacecraft will prepare to execute its dramatic grand finale orbits of Saturn. OSIRIS-REx will launch to a near-Earth asteroid to collect a sample for return to Earth in 2023. In 2017 and 2018, NASA will launch 7 exciting science missions, including the James Webb Space Telescope. Before we send humans to Mars, robots are paving the way, with Mars InSight now targeted for launch in 2018, another Mars rover set to launch in 2020, joining the Curiosity and the Opportunity rovers now exploring the Red Planet, and work is underway to define the next Mars mission for 2022. We are formulating missions to explore Jupiter's moon Europa and WFIRST, and are accelerating the building of Landsat 9 as part of our sustainable land imaging architecture to continue our 40-year record of high-quality measurements of Earth's land cover. NASA technology drives exploration. With this request, NASA will continue to conduct rapid development and incorporation of transformative space technologies to enable future human and robotic missions, increase capabilities of other U.S. agencies, and address aerospace industry challenges. Space technology investments will ensure that we continue to lead the world in exploration and scientific discovery. NASA's aeronautics program advances U.S. global leadership by developing and transferring key enabling technologies to make aviation safer, more efficient, and more environmentally friendly. With this request, NASA Aeronautics is ready to take the next step to develop and fly X-plane demonstrators in partnership with industry and academia, including ultra-efficient subsonic transport experimental aircraft and the world's first low-boom supersonic flight demonstrator. Mr. Chairman, we appreciate the support we have received from this committee during my tenure, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much. Administrator Bolden, the discretionary budget request proposes, as I mentioned in my opening statement, to cut SLS by $770 million and Orion by $217 million. That's nearly $1 billion. These funds that NASA proposes to cut, I believe, are absolutely necessary under a constrained budget profile to continue progress toward a crewed launch as early as 2021. Without these funds, I believe NASA's ability to reach far beyond Earth's orbit is at risk of delay and cost escalation. The discretionary amounts being requested by the administration in 17 do not even meet the agreed upon funding levels in the agency's decision documents. Asking for less invites delay, increased cost, and inefficient program management, I believe. A couple of questions to you. Why is NASA not even asking for the discretionary funding needed to achieve results at the confidence levels set by the agency in their planning agreements? And secondly, how can you justify, if you can, the financial risk NASA has taken with its exploration program?
Mr. Chairman,
I know you
NASA
don't make all those decisions. I know.
Yes, sir. But actually, NASA, in my estimation, or from where I sit, we're requesting a $19 billion budget for this coming fiscal year. And I know that may sound trivial, but I leave it up to the budgeteers and folk to determine where all the money comes from.
Sure.
I know my agreement with the director of OMB and subsequently the President of the United States is that we're requesting $19 billion for the NASA program.
I want to get into another aspect. There's been a lot of debate over whether to limit the number of or to outright ban the Russian RD-180 engines that are used on rockets launched in the U.S. There are some who threaten to enact a total ban, which, if enacted, would seriously impact missions and capabilities for the national defense. What is rarely discussed is the impact such drastic measures could have on NASA. Contractors for both commercial crew and commercial cargo missions intend to use the Atlas V rocket, which uses, as you know, the RD-180 engine for resupplying the International Space Station. Science missions are also currently being designed with the intent of using the reliable capabilities of the ULA rockets. A couple of questions to you. If a comprehensive engine ban on purchasing Russian engines, regardless of being designated as national security or scientific missions, were successfully implemented, what would be the impact on NASA? And secondly, how confident are you that the number of RD-180 engines currently available will allow NASA to continue with its planned flights?
Mr. Chairman, I'll answer the second question first, but well, let me say this. I am in full agreement with the testimony that Secretary James has given on numerous occasions.
Right.
We commiserate with each other on a regular basis. She and I both agree that while we want to rid ourselves of dependence on the Russian rocket engine, then it should be done in an orderly fashion.
We all want to get rid of them, but we have to be measured in how we do it.
Exactly, and I agree with that sentiment exactly, and that's the plea that we have made. We are counting on ULA being able to get the number of engines that will satisfy the requirements for NASA to fly the Dream Chaser when it comes around in 2019, but more quickly to fly the Boeing CST-100 Starliner. So we have I think American industry has risen to the occasion. When you look at Blue Origin and Jeff Bezos and what he is doing with ULA and the team there to help develop a new launch system, I think you've heard far too much that we don't gain by developing a rocket without a full system in which it's integrated. So we support what Secretary James has said, which is we preach patience.
That's also the position of the Secretary of Defense, is it not?
That is absolutely right.
And also the National Director of National Intelligence?
That's correct.
And others?
That is correct. And Secretary James, in her new capacity as the executive agent for space, so she speaks for all of us in one regard, although she doesn't speak for civil space, but she and I are in lockstep in what she has told the committees.
In the area of getting into non-discretionary funding,
Yes, sir.
bring it up. Nearly 5% of NASA's budget proposal is comprised of funding gimmicks, I believe, which are contingent upon tax increases and other legislation that is yet or maybe will never be enacted by Congress. With such a reliance on non-discretionary spending to accomplish its goals, NASA would face difficult funding choices if the agency were to only receive the $18.26 billion in discretionary dollars that is requested. Significant impacts, I believe, would fall on NASA's vehicles that enable the exploration plans of traveling to Mars. Other missions across NASA would likely be shut down, severely cut back, or not started at all. My questions, a couple of them. What specific legislative language you're sharing with the authorizing committee that, if enacted, would provide NASA with $773 million in funding.
Mr. Chairman, I'll just say
That's a tough question. I know it is.
It's not a tough question at all. It's out of my league, to
Well,
be
it's
quite
a
honest.
tough question to find the money.
Well, my hope is that we will be able to continue to work with this committee and the committee in the House, as we have always tried to do, to come up with a way that we reach an appropriate amount of money for NASA's budget. And as I said again, my submission to this committee and the Appropriations Committee in the House is for $19 billion.
Well, I think we've got a lot of work to do in the committee, but with Senator McCoskey's experience and help, maybe we can work through it, but it's going to be difficult. Senator McCoskey.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I too have concern about the mandatory funding, because it sounds like it's mandatory. You know, for the folks back home or don't understand Washington speak and budget lingo and the way words mean what they don't mean in Washington, they either have no meaning or they have a different meaning. Mandatory means it's mandatory if we get the revenue, and that's going to be a stretch in the short time allocated. So, but I believe that the hallmark of this committee has been the B word: bipartisan, working together, and also here a balanced space program assuring human space exploration, space science, aeronautics, and a reliable going out into space transportation system. I think if we stay on our balanced system, I think we can be able to get through it. Mr. Director, I know this too is your last time before this subcommittee, or last scheduled time. I want to thank you for your service, both as a Marine Corps officer, as an astronaut, and now the leadership that you've helped provide at NASA. You've literally been in the line of fire and going where no people have gone on many occasions now. I want to get to the question about space science and the James Webb Telescope. It's got to go right. You know, this committee was able to fix the Hubble, and it performed in a stunning way. The Hubble telescope not only brought us great science, it brought us great prestige, and it also was an inspiration to young people. But we don't have the money now to go back and fix the James Webb. So my question to you is, number one, are we on track for the James Webb to go? Because if it makes it, and I believe it can and it must, it will secure America's space in astronomy for the next 50 years. So are we managing the project to maintain a 2018 launch risk? Do you have adequate resources to prevent problems, and including a schedule reserve? Because if it breaks, I'm not so sure we can fix it.
Senator, as I promised you when we met some years ago, when I came before this committee, or I came before you to admit that we had James Webb in trouble, that we were underfunded and we had overestimated our ability to deliver I think it was a 2014 launch then. The agreement that we made was that we would go back and take a look at it and bring you what we thought were reliable numbers. We are now well on course to deliver the James Webb Space Telescope to orbit in October of 2018. We have about a 7.5 month, pad is a bad word to use, but contingency reserve in terms of time on the schedule, so that means that we have the funds available to get it off on time. So in a simple word, yes, we will deliver James Webb to its position, you know, 1.5 million kilometers from Earth in October of 2018.
Well, maybe we'll go to that together, but
hopefully we will.
It's got to work. It's got to work. On a very bread and butter issue, I'm going to bring up the issue of satellite servicing. As you know, this is being developed at Goddard Space Agency. Last year, we provided $138 million for satellite servicing to support the Restore mission to demonstrate the ability to refuel an on-orbit government science satellites, which be not only us, but it could mean refurbishing things like the weather satellites, where all they take is either a new nudge to an orbit where they've drifted out or to refuel. I'm concerned that we have reduced the funding for satellite servicing in fiscal 17, and we're also going to rely on a mandatory request. Could you tell us where we are in satellite servicing? Because it would be important for, one, jobs at Goddard, open and transparent here. And the second, though, is it will really help refurbish other government satellites, and also could be an opportunity for lucrative and productive private sector work. Those companies in Maryland that build satellites say, if we could refurbish, we could save money and yet maintain productivity. Could you share?
Yes, ma'am, I can. And I think, what you and I have discussed before is a program called Restore L that is being headed up by the Goddard Space Flight Center. It is in formulation right now, and we have put $130 million toward the Restore L program. We have moved it out of the Human Exploration and Operations Mission Directorate and into space technology, which is a place where it probably better fits. We've had to make some sacrifices in space technology with some of the programs that we are now not able to do or won't be able to do on time. But we're well on the way to delivering Restore L and the satellite servicing mission. The other thing that we're getting from it is finding synergies with the asteroid redirect mission, which is something that is a part of our journey to Mars, if you will. So we're finding that in working with industry and academia and entrepreneurs, that we are learning a lot and we're gaining a lot by working on Restore L. It is another thing that Restore L has done. When you look back on the lessons that are learned from previous shuttle missions, some people will remember a mission where we attempted to go and save a spent upper stage rocket using a probe, if you will, looked like a jousting stick, to go up the end of the rocket and bring it back to the shuttle and then eventually back to Earth. As a result of the preliminary work we've been doing on satellite servicing, Orbital ATK now, working with a company called Vivisat, right out in Beltsville, Maryland, has developed a satellite servicing device that we think will, when teamed with Restore L, will be able to cover industry, will be able to cover.
See, that's my whole point.
Orbit.
It's government and industry together
Exactly.
in this country.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much for the excellent job you're doing as chairman of our committee. And I especially want to compliment Barbara Mikulski for her outstanding service on this committee and how much we're going to miss her. It won't be near as much fun and probably not near as effective as it has been, but we'll all work together and try to live up to the stature and credit you've reflected on this committee. We appreciate the good work of the administrator of NASA as well. I think this is one of those situations where our committee has the opportunity to learn more about these programs under the jurisdiction of the committee that have such long-lasting and far-reaching consequences. We need to get it right. We need to be sure that we understand the best that's in our national interest, and that we provide the funding that is needed for the important programs that come under the jurisdiction of this committee. I really don't have any questions except to come here today and congratulate Barbara and thank our distinguished witness for his service. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Senator Capito.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I, too, would like to add my voice of admiration and gratitude to Senator Mikulski. She's a wonderful champion for many things, and one of which is NASA. And so thank you for the inspiration that you provide for us and the future in this Senate. General Bolden, first of all, I'd like to thank you for coming to West Virginia State University and delivering the graduation address. It was very much appreciated.
And I discovered a new NASA hero in Ms. Katherine Johnson, who was the recipient of the Presidential Medal of Freedom
Right.
this past year, and it was absolutely incredible having an opportunity to meet a real American hero like that.
Great.
Yes.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I wanted to follow up on one of the questions that Senator Mikulski was asking on the satellite servicing capabilities. Some of that work is done obviously most of it's done at Goddard, but some of it's done at the West Virginia Robotic Technology Center in West Virginia as the lead academic institution. You know, I kind of didn't hear in your answer, there's a small cut to this program. No.
No, ma'am. That was a point that Senator Mikulski asked. Were we funding it to the level that had been requested, which is, I think this year it's 130 million, and no, it's 130 million in the next budget. So, but it is fully funded.
Okay.
It's in formulation right now, and the center at West Virginia, up there, is also, because that's an extension of Goddard.
Right.
And the robotic lab at the Goddard Space Flight Center. So the team there it enables them to bring in graduate students, college students, and
Right.
others to work in that field, but it's a part of the program.
Thank you, too. Also, I'd like to say that I was honored to attend the Sample Return Robot Challenge Winner Level 2, which again was at WVU. They not only achieved a victory, but received $100,000, which they're going to put back into scholarships for future students and to enhance their capabilities there. So you and I have talked about how do we inspire future generations, and I think those challenges are always, I think, very inspirational. Now I'm going to go way out on something I need you to educate me on. The President has proposed an increase in the area of heliophysics. Don't ask me to tell you exactly what that is, but can you give me an understanding of what the benefits of this program would be? Again, West Virginia University has faculty members that are involved in this program. Can you give me an understanding? I know it has some weather implications, so just a brief on heliophysics.
Heliophysics is the study of the sun, and the big implication is space weather. It's something that you and I never heard of probably before 2 years ago, or maybe real smart people like some of you did, but not me. But it is the study of our sun, and it's really trying to help us understand what potential impact solar flares, phenomena called coronal mass ejections that are just big bursts of energy from the sun, what would be the effect on our communication system, on all of our networks, since most things are space-based today. If that kind of energy made it through to the orbiting satellites, it could have an adverse impact. So understanding the energy that's coming from the sun, we know how to harden satellites now, things we probably didn't think about before. So it's critically important to essentially the satellite infrastructure of the nation.
Well, I noticed in the explanation in your testimony that it involves some of the technologies that's been developed as getting closer to the sun, being able to explore in a more detailed and innovative way. So you've convinced me. That's good for me to know more about the sun.
That's what they told me.
Especially when it's shining, yes. Thank you. Just one last thing, and you and I talked about this again. I know it's a passion of yours in education, but we're still falling short in our STEM education. I know NASA has been working with education resource through EPSCoR and your space grant programs. I just would ask a rededication from your position and certainly NASA's position to inspire that next generation. We talked about the low percentage of minorities and women in these fields. We talked about partnership, working together. So anything you can do or you think we can help with that, please make sure that we're there on the front with you.
Senator, I think the one thing that is absolutely necessary is continued emphasis from people like you who have a voice to help us understand several things. The critical importance of STEM education in this nation. I am not trying to be funny or trivial, but I believe NASA dedicates $19 billion in its 2017 budget to STEM education. And some people say, but how can that be? Well, when we launched Orion on December 5th last year, it actually had a student experiment on it. That is something that a student normally would not get in a classroom. There was not a dime that came out of the education, the formal education budget. It all came out of our exploration budget, but that's STEM education, and that's what we're the only agency of the federal government, I think, that can say that every dollar of our expenditures contributes to STEM education. The other area that we need help is just really encouraging people to take seriously the critical need to increase the numbers of women and minorities in the STEM fields.
Right.
We're challenged, and we think we have some answers, but we don't have the answers, all the answers.
Well, as a zoology major in college, you can do other things with the science degree besides be the administrator at NASA, so there is hope. Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator Bozeman?
I'd just like to follow up on Senator Capito's question about the funding, for the science. The reality is, and I appreciate what you're saying, what you do and things is viewed by a lot of people and things, and that's an educational opportunity. But the reality is that you're still cutting the Office of Education and the EPSCoR budget. So can you talk a little bit specifically about that? In a state like West Virginia and a state like Arkansas, that really does make a difference. It's not very many dollars at all, but it really is getting involved young people who are going to be the future, of NASA as we go forward. And so, like I said, these are minimal dollars. I understand what you're saying in the other regard, but comment a little bit about the importance of the Office of Education and EPSCoR, and why we are cutting back in a very, like I said, those aren't very many dollars at all, especially for states like Arkansas and West Virginia, our rural states.
With funding being limited the way it has been since I became the NASA administrator, and it's essentially decreasing. It's not, as we have level budgets, that means it's decreasing. And so we have had to try to find innovative ways to continue to fund education in the manner that we did before. And one of the things that we have done at NASA is we consolidate inside the agency. The Science Mission Directorate is a good example. Rather than having every project responsible for managing its own little education program, those funds are consolidated in the office of the Science Mission Directorate. And then it's the Science Mission Directorate head who decides which projects we're going to focus on for a particular educational initiative. So we think what we're getting is more efficient application of our funds toward education, trying to do more with less. And I hate saying that because we're trying to be more efficient with the fewer dollars that we have.
Okay. No, I understand the budget constraints and things. Again, I understand what you're saying in efficiency. Certainly we want that. But I think in this case, the reality is that there'll be less programs, in the states that really are very important. It's not a lot of dollars, but I think it's one of those things when you look at dollars spent versus return, to society, return to your program. It's something that really is important. So we do appreciate your hard work and appreciate the agency and all that you represent. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Mikulski?
Mr. Administrator, we could go through a lot of the line item questions, but I'm concerned about America and its future. I'm concerned about where the job's going to be, where are young people going to work, are these going to be jobs that pay living wages? And therefore, this is why I'm a big believer in American innovation. You and I talked about what generation we are from. We've seen great discovery, great jobs. But I will tell you, the anger we see in America right now is directly tied to the loss of jobs, as well as the loss of confidence in our institution. So my question to you is, how do you see this budget closing the innovation deficit? How are we, what is it that we're doing? Senator Capito's question is this science for science sake, which is a worthy goal, but where's it all going to take us? At NASA, Goddard, and the Space Telescope Institute, we have 3 Nobel Prize winners. Dr. Giacconi, a founder of the Space Telescope Institute, Dr. Mather at Goddard, Dr. Adam Rees, who just won the Nobel Prize in physics. We win the Nobel Prizes, but I'm going to win the markets. I'm going to win the markets. So where do you see 2 things? What are we promoting in innovation? And essentially, what is in this budget and what is in your strategic plan for transfer to do in this administration and transfer to the next, whoever that might be, tech transfer, so we win the prizes, but we win the markets, and our young people see that they have a future where we are going to continue to make something and make something of ourselves.
If you look at the budget, inside the Human Exploration Mission Directorate there is a line item that's called Habitation Systems. And under Habitation Systems are a number of lesser projects that are all technology development, innovation to help us be able to get humans to Mars. Another one of those things in that is called Next Step. And that's, I want to say, 12 individual contracts that we let over this last year. Among them, as a matter of fact, is some work to shore up the laboratory for Dr. Franklin Chang Diaz with a Vasmer engine. So we're talking about advanced in-space propulsion. So I think we are actually making small investments, incremental investments in American industry, but more importantly, in small businesses and entrepreneurial entities that are going to keep us on the cusp of being the innovation leaders in the world. I mentioned to you earlier, and hopefully every member of the committee has a copy of our little flyer on the future of flight, or what we call New Aviation Horizons. This is all fueling the engine of innovation in the aeronautics community, the largest balance of trade item in this nation. The reason that we are so excited about this, the reason that American industry is so excited about it, is because it's returning NASA to the position where we are the leaders in aeronautics research and development, and we are, again, going to provide for more jobs, fuel the economy, and keep us in front of everybody else in the world.
Well, thank you very much. We have to stand up for the future.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Mikulski. If there are no further questions, senators may submit additional questions for the subcommittee's official hearing record to the NASA Administrator. Would request if those questions are sent to you, Mr. Administrator, they be answered within 30 days.
Yes, ma'am.
We appreciate your appearance today. We look forward to trying to work with you on putting this appropriation together.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The hearing